Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Kenneth Paul Tan, and I am a professor at the National University of Singapore's Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy. It's my great pleasure this evening to moderate this webinar, which is part of the Smart Nation in Conversation series. This is an initiative that's co-hosted by Smart Nation and Digital Government Office and People's Association. The purpose of this series is to engage citizens in critical discussion of Singapore's Smart Nation drive. The title of this evening's webinar is The Digital Journey for Hawkers and Small to Medium Enterprises. Now, it really goes without saying that COVID-19 has caused disruption to many businesses, especially micro businesses, including hawkers. They often do not have the resources and sometimes even the inclination to pivot their business models digitally in such a short and difficult period of time. It's often argued, though, from even before the current pandemic, that enterprises of all scales need to adapt and to adopt digital solutions in order to thrive, perhaps even just to survive. Now, in this webinar, we hope to discuss the government's efforts to support digitalization through more recent programs such as Hawkers Go Digital and Heartlands Go Digital, as well as older pre-COVID programs like SMEs Go Digital that has been in place since, I believe, 2017. We want to find out more about the challenges faced within the micro-enterprise community, especially hawkers, in their digitalization journey, and in particular, what can be done better. We also want to explore the potential of ground-up initiatives, whether in the private or the people sectors, to help bridge the digital gap in the ecosystem. Now, to address these issues, we have today a fantastic panel, or perhaps I should say manel. And yet, I will say, and I suspect you will agree with me, that this is one of the most diverse manels I've ever had the pleasure to moderate. First, we have Mr. S. Iswaran, who is Minister for Communications and Information and Minister in charge of Trade Relations. We have Mr. Melvin Chew, who is founder of Hawkers United, Tapao 2020. He is himself a hawker and he owns Chinji Teochew Braised Duck and Kway Chap. Then we have Mr. Yeo Hyang Meng, who is president of the Federation of Merchants Associations Singapore. And finally, we have Mr. Yi Wee Tang, who is the managing director of Grab Singapore. Now, we would like to keep this 1.5-hour webinar informal and conversational in tone and spirit. We've put aside time in the second half to entertain as many of your questions as we can. So I would like to urge you, the viewers, to please submit your questions anytime via the Q&A function. And I'll do my very best to get them asked and answered, or I will at least try to cluster similar questions together. So let's begin. And I would like to begin by asking the Minister to let us know and understand better the existing schemes that the government has put in place in order to help hawkers and micro businesses. So, Minister.
Thank you very much, Kenneth. So I suppose since I'm part of the manual, it's time to man up. So let me start and get going. First, I want to say I'm delighted to join all of you together with Hyang Ming, Wee Tang, and Melvin. And I thought it's best if I just keep my comments brief, focusing on a few key points. And then I think it'll be a lot more interesting for us to take up some of the issues in discussion because that'll be of most relevance for all of you as well. But let me start by making a few key points. The first is, clearly, digitalization is right now an imperative that, in the past, people used to think about it as something that's maybe a distraction or something we have to tolerate. But today, it has moved to becoming an not just a business strategy, but in fact a basic necessity. The number of businesses whom I've met who now tell me that if not for their digital strategy, the last 6 months would have been very difficult for them and quite challenging. I think it's quite significant. And those of you on the panel, you hear from the others on the panel, they'll be able to, I think, substantiate that much better than I can. So I think that's the first point, that it is not just here to stay, but it is actually an important tool that we should be taking advantage of. And in fact, there's some surveys done by, for example, Microsoft and International Data Corporation Asia Pacific that shows that 75% of companies are already thinking about digitalization in one form or another. So that's a good sign, because what it means is the awareness is already there and they're accelerating their digitalization. The key thing is how we go about doing this. And in this regard, I think one thing I want to emphasize is this is not just about government or government programs. I mean, yes, I think it's important that government step up to help all our businesses to the extent that we can, so that they can get onto this digitalization transition and journey and strengthen themselves. But at the end of the day, this is a partnership, because this is a national digitalization movement. Whether you're talking about big corporations like MNCs and large local enterprises, or our SMEs and micro SMEs like our hawkers and so on. Whether you're talking about PMETs and people at the higher skills kind of jobs, to our broad base of workers, to our citizens. Whether we're talking about corporations or community organizations, I think ultimately this is a national movement, because we are all trying to make this transition. And if we can do this well, and this is why the partnerships are key, because with partnerships between government, the private sector, the people sector, if we can all work together on this, then I think we will make a significant impact. And we really will be well positioned for the future, not just coping with the immediate challenges, but also preparing ourselves well to secure our economic prospects for the future and our competitiveness. So on the part of the government, we are very focused on this, and our agencies, so for example, in MCI, INDA in particular, and then from MTI, like Enterprise Singapore and so on, have been involved in this effort to make sure that all our companies have the opportunity to adopt and use technology. So if I can just give you some examples, I don't want to give you a long laundry list. I think you all have heard about this many times, but let me just give you a few examples of what I mean. You see, when you say smart nation, really a smart nation is made up of digital government, digital economy, and a digital society. Digital government, because we want to be able to provide services through digital platforms for the benefit of our citizens. Digital economy, so that all our businesses, big or small, whatever the sector, are able to use digital solutions to improve their competitiveness, access more markets. Digital society, so that everyone, whether they are young or young at heart, whatever their education background, everyone has the opportunity to benefit from this. So for the business part of it, one of the key planks, as you heard from Kenneth, is this thing called SME Go Digital. And really under this, we've got a range of things, for enterprises at different stages of their growth. Starting digital, meaning the moment they are starting their company, we have pre-approved packages of digital solutions which they can adopt with some funding support as well. And this includes things like human resource planning, or getting onto various digital platforms, marketing platforms, etc. Then as they scale up, there are other kinds of productivity solutions that they can use. And going beyond that, we have the SME Grow Digital, which is to help our companies now go into international markets by plugging into e-commerce platforms that give them access to external markets. And we all know now, especially, this is even more important. The ability to plug into external markets, partner businesses from overseas as part of this as well. So that's sort of the one main arc, the SME Go Digital program, combining it with, I mean, in particular, the elements are the Start Digital for early stage, then there are some for the mid stage companies, and those who are internationalizing, we have the Grow Digital program. At the same time, because of COVID, we know that there's been an extra pressure on our companies, and many of them want to go, move into digitalization faster. And we have done some targeted measures there as well. One of them is to enhance the productivity solutions grant under Enterprise Singapore, so that companies can adopt various solutions. And then, importantly, one of the things we have done is also this digital resilience bonus. Because, in particular in our economy, we are starting with, for this program, with the retail and the food services sector, because these have been the hardest hit by some of the hardest hit sectors, and it's to help them adopt digital solutions and giving them a DRB, digital resilience bonus of about $10,000 for them to be able to do that. So that's broadly how we are going about it. In terms of numbers, it's not bad, but it can be a lot better. It's not bad, meaning, about 25,000 SMEs have adopted digital solutions. Now, that sounds reasonable when you think about it in absolute terms, but when you think about it, we have about 200,000 enterprises in Singapore. About 90 to 95% of them at least are SMEs. So when you look at it that way, we still have, the glass is maybe one quarter full, one third full. We got a long way to go still. But it's a good start, and I would like to think that that's a foundation from which we build. But even things like Grow Digital and so on, about 1,500 or so, 1,500 companies have plugged into this international markets and so on through these digital platforms. So again, it's a good start in terms of how we can do this. I would say the biggest benefit of COVID-19 is really that, before COVID-19, when I used to go around meeting groups of companies and associations, they will all listen to me very politely about digitalization, but I'm quite sure inside they were thinking, well, thank you for the advice, but we've got a lot of other things to do. But because, necessity is the mother of invention, so now everybody is on it. And Melvin, I'm sure, can tell you about how he went about it and so on. I'm sure the hawkers would not have jumped onto his platform so easily if not for COVID. But COVID comes and it changes the whole scene, So what we are doing now is, again, riding on that, two important initiatives. Hawkers Go Digital. The hawkers are our micro SMEs, right? At the extremes of our economy. If our hawkers can adopt digital solutions, then nobody else has any excuse, frankly. So the idea is, can we get all our hawkers to adopt, say, in this case, digital payment solution, SGQR, right? SGQR codes and so on. And I know Grab is doing quite a bit of work with hawker centers in terms of aggregating for the purposes of last mile delivery and so on. And I'm sure we'll hear more about that later as well. But the idea was really to get this thing going, get our hawkers onto it, right? And that's why we set up the SG Digital Office with 1,000 digital ambassadors. These guys are all embedded in our community so that the hawkers don't feel like you come here, you sell me the idea, once I buy, you disappear, right? The idea is really, it's a journey, it's not a destination, so we need to walk it with you, and we are there to help you until you get to a level where you're comfortable navigating on your own. That's one thing. The other one that we have moved on is this thing called Heartlands Go Digital. This is really an extension, if you like, from SME Go Digital. And I'm sure Hyang can talk about this more. But this is what we just announced last week. Siman and Yenling were talking about this. This is an extension of our outreach into the community. Hawkers, we have about 19,000 hawkers in Singapore today. And I think we have gone through the hawker centers 2 or 3 times. And as of now, including all the new signups, which is over 4,000, about 7,400 or 500 have already signed up for SGQR code. Heartland Go Digital, the Heartland shops, Hyang Ming, you can elaborate later. I think there are about 20,000 such shops. Their needs are a bit more complex because they're larger operations, but again, the same idea. How can we take solutions to them, help them adopt the solutions, and then benefit from the productivity, efficiency gain, and strengthen their competitiveness? So that's the overall strategy, that basically every business must be digitally empowered, every worker must be digitally skilled, and every citizen must have the digital knowledge to benefit from this entire digital transition of our economy, of and the smart nation move that we are making. That is the heart of it. And last thing I would say is, this is, as I said at the start, this is not about government doing this on its own. That cannot be the way we go about this, because it is such a diverse economy. The segments of society are so different. We are involving and partnering everyone: merchants association, trade associations, business partners, community organizations, companies that are volunteering, and so on. Everybody has to step up, because at the end of the day, we need all of us to play our part. You see, if you're a business, it's the decision and the courage to say, "All right, I have to now digitalize. Let's make the move." If you're a worker, the decision to say, "All right, I'm going to start picking up digital skills." If we are a citizen, is learning to derive benefit the services that government can provide through digital services and so on. And if you're a worker, picking up the skills. So I mean, all of us in different ways, we need to embrace this. And if all of us come together, then I think it's not just about overcoming COVID and the problems or challenges of COVID. It's really about preparing ourselves, as DPM Heng has put it, emerging stronger from COVID and after COVID. So I'll stop there, and maybe the others, I'm sure the others will have a lot more to add. Thank you.
Yes, I'm sure they will. And on that note of COVID, I might want to turn to Melvin, and I think yours is an example of where, out of COVID something emerges stronger, right? So can you maybe share with us your experience of what it was like for you as a hawker and other hawkers like you dealing with the pandemic? And then maybe tell us something also about why you decided to start up Hawkers United.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So basically, I started Hawkers United Tapao 200 during when PN Lee announced the news of circuit breaker. Even before that, before circuit breakers, hawkers already having a hard time in having sales, especially hawkers like me who are based in CBD. So there's one thing that I think of is hawkers need to be united together so that we can go through this pandemic. So, and I understand that there are a lot of non-tech-savvy hawkers around. So, that's give me the intention of setting up this Facebook group. So the intention is we can have hawkers all together in the platform. So at the same time, they can tell people that they are still operating, they are doing what sort of deliveries, and consumer they can also hunt for their hawkers in the platform too. So it's a win-win situation. And after I set up this Hawkers United, I set up another group which I call it Delivery United. Because during the pandemic, I find out that a lot of our drivers, they are also jobless, so they are facing a lot of problems. So at the same time, hawkers also need drivers, as there are quite a number of hawkers who are not into the delivery platform now. So this Delivery United actually link up with Hawkers United, and that helps hawkers quite a lot. Yeah.
And that's an amazing story because you are probably dealing with your own problems, right, in such a time, but you can still think about your fellow hawkers and other people who are affected by this terrible situation. How is it that you had so much ability to help others when you have to also deal with your own business issues?
Because I am very into hawker culture because I basically grew up in the hawker center since I was about 8 years old. So I grew up in a hawker center. I got very, very deep passion and feelings for hawker center. I don't wish to see that there will be a day where hawkers die off and all the old brandings, which they take about 30 to 40 years to build up the brandings, and in just 1 or 2 months pandemic times, the business will crash. So that actually made us feel very sad about it. Another thing is a lot of people call me as a kaypoh hawker. So since I'm kaypoh, I might as well do as much thing as I can to help as much people as I able to lah. At the same time, if I help people, people also help me. Yeah.
I see. Singapore needs a lot more kaypohs.
Correct.
So you mentioned something very interesting earlier, which is that you are yourself tech savvy, but you also noticed that there are many other hawkers who are also tech savvy. But there are, I'm sure, many, many more hawkers who are not tech savvy, right? Who are quite
Yes,
nervous
correct.
about technology. How did you manage to persuade them to join you, to use your platform? It must have been quite scary for them, or they may not even think they have the time to do that, right?
Yes. I think we have to understand that elderly hawkers we need to be patient with them because they totally don't understand what is social media, what is delivery platform. They don't understand that. So we need to take quite a longer time to let them understand it. And obviously, we need to speak to them in various dialects, like Hokkien, Teochew, Cantonese, because some of them don't even speak Mandarin or English. So the most important thing is how we are going to communicate with the elderly hawkers who are not tech savvy. So patience is another thing. So we need to really be patient and help them out and explain a lot of things to them. Like we have to set out an email account for them, then we can set out a social media account for them, then after that, then we can get them how to post in the Facebook. So these are all the step and procedure which we need to do to help the elderly hawkers. Yeah.
It's very challenging. It's not only the technology of setting up accounts, as you say, even language and all of that can make it very difficult for them to come on board. Huh?
Correct.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
so during circuit breaker, on my off day, I actually went to look for a lot of elderly hawkers. A lot of them PM me through their friends or what. I will just go down there and help them and guide them.
Mm, mm. Excellent, excellent. We have many more things to ask you, but maybe we leave it for the next round.
Sure.
So if I can move to Hyang Meng. Now you are the president of the Federation of Merchants Association, which means that you represent a very, very large number of MSMEs, right?
Right.
Very many.
Right.
So you will have a very good understanding of what that space is like. Now, all of us always say that digital technology really supports the growth of MSMEs. But is this 100% true? I mean, can you maybe help us to understand, does digital technology always help? Or are there instances where, it's a bit less clear?
I think I share what Minister has said, that digital technology is something, it's basically, it's a basic requirement nowadays, in the business world, right? As we can see that, like what just now Melvin have shared with us, hawkers themselves, if they also embrace with digital technology, meaning that if they can do their marketing through the social media and over several platforms, you'll be able to basically outreach to the customer. Basically, you have a bigger base of customer that you can tap on. So in terms of SME, it is no different because over in the heartland, most of the businesses that we are operating on basically are servicing our local citizens, right? So we have basically we have a big pool of residents that stay in the heartland. So basically, if the businesses if they can adopt the basically the digital platform, digital technology, they will be able to reach out to a bigger base of customer base. So that there's one way for them to basically to generate higher revenue, have a bigger digital exposure. Also will be able to help them to get customers that coming from other part of Singapore, right? So the other part of it basically is that you know, if you want to basically cut down your manpower costs, one area is that you maybe have to streamline your operation. You have to change your business, basically your business model. By adopting digital technology, you are able, we can actually leverage on the digital technology basically by you know, hope that we are able to achieve the productivity that whereby we are able to bring down our business costs, right?
Thank you.
Right.
That's that's a lot of expectation. Eh?
Right, right.
So I recall what Minister said earlier, which is he hopes that every business will be digitally enabled. Every customer will be.
Yes.
I remember he used the word every.
Right.
Do you think that every is realistic?
We actually we must try, but as we can actually basically learn from what Melvin have shared with us, right? A lot of heartland businesses, a lot of micro SME business owner, a lot of hawkers, they are non-English speaking, right? A lot of them do not understand English, and basically this group of people, they are, you know, at the age of 50 over 60 years old, some of them as old as 70 years old, you know. So language is one of the barrier, right? Because when we adopt digital technology, a lot of times that when, let's say we go to social media platform, we have to use English to communicate with our customers, right? So a lot of them basically they just couldn't handle it. So this is one of the so-called barrier they have to overcome it, right? This is one area of it. And the other thing is also that in terms of computer, basically if you want to, let's say that if you encounter some problem in a computer, a lot of basically error messages and all those things will be in English. So a lot of them, you know, they don't understand it. So
even when I see it, I often don't understand it.
Right, right. So there's so-called a psychological fear, you know. Yes. So there are certain areas that we have to overcome it. And we hope that with the setting up with the digital office, I think it's a very good idea. Basically, we get the digital ambassador that coming down to the ground to handhold the business owner, not only to handhold the business owner, also to help our senior so-called residents, and a lot of residents, they do not know how to operate. Let's say that like if they go to buy, if they want to pay something by e-payment, a lot of them just couldn't basically operate their handphone and all these things. So in the process, before they do that, also you need help to do setup. You know, basically, you know, you want to get your bank account linked to your handphone and all those things. So there's a lot of nitty-gritty things that we have to overcome it. So I think all these the digital ambassadors, they come in very handy, very in a very useful way. So basically, they are able to help out, provide a lot of helping. So yes, we want everybody to digital empower. Yes, but I think we have to take a step. I think we should be able to do it. Yeah, over time. Again, I think so far we see some good progress. We should continue, right?
Good. Before I go on to Wee Tang, I just want to ask one more question. So this is a great aspiration that we want to digitally empower everyone. Can you maybe share with us what are some of the things that associations are doing, and as well as the federation that you are leading? Because we've heard what the government is doing, and you've already said how the digital ambassadors are very, very useful. What are some of the things that the associations are doing?
Okay, currently the association actually we are doing a Heartland Digital Survey, and in fact we have restarted about 2 months ago. So we have basically we have started to talk to our Heartland businesses as well as some of the hawkers, right? So we understand what is their concern, what do they need. So this is an area that basically currently we are gathering information. At the same time, that I think the IMDA as well as the EAG, they have a program called Heartland Go Digital Program. Basically, both agencies actually have basically have shortlisted a number of solution providers. So that so-called the software solution provider, e-commerce solution provider, so that these businesses, this platform, we believe that it should be able to help the Heartland micro businesses to make a start for them to go into the e-commerce platform. So there will be training provided, there will be one-to-one guidance provided, and plus our so-called business advisor. We have a business advisor on the ground, together with the other SME so-called center business advisor. So we are basically going down to the ground to guide our businesses to basically to train them so that they are able to make a first step. And we hope that by going through the first step, they should be able to reap some benefits of the so-called the e-commerce solution and to gain some confidence. So we hope that they are able to basically to take a bigger stride to come in.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thanks so much for sharing that. Can I turn to Witang now? Grab, obviously, Grab has provided extensive platforms, right, to help hawkers and SMEs to digitalize. What are some other initiatives that Grab has put out or is thinking of launching, which can encourage more to embrace digitalization and to embrace it more tightly? Okay. Is there an approach that you're taking?
Sure. First of all, good evening, Minister and fellow panelists. Thank you for having me here today. It's really indeed an honor to be here. So let me just start by sharing a couple of thoughts, so that relevant thoughts so that we can anchor our today's discussion on. So the first is on the view that online consumption is here to stay. During circuit breaker, we saw an increased demand for online purchases, not just for food, but groceries, fresh produce, and e-commerce in general. And now that even when we are in phase 2, people are still seeking for even greater convenience and the ability to get what they want, when they want, and where they want. And from our data alone, based on our data, it shows that demand for Grab food today remains elevated, even though we are in phase 2. We continue to see a demand that's 2 times more than the pre-COVID level. So what does impact to the businesses is obviously going digital cannot be an afterthought anymore. It's key to capture all the opportunities today. So, and we also seen that our merchant partners have become more proactive and motivated. They want to go online, want to learn new things, how to grow and digitalize their business. On the ground as well, we are seeing a lot of interest from the our own merchant community that are listed on the Grab platform, not just for food, but for payments. In the last 6 months, we have onboarded nearly 5,000 merchants onto our Grab platform, whether it's Grab Food or GrabMart platform. And I think this is also very aligned with many of the studies you see. The one that UOB shared is 60% of the Singapore's SMEs have gone online, and everyone is building their capabilities into the digital sales and services area. So what does all this mean for us at Grab is we need to do more than just helping them online, going online. we must help them to grow in the digital space by sharing our tech know-how, and also for us to innovate our services to better serve our merchants. Being successful online requires a different strategy and approach from the traditional way of driving traffic to the physical stores, which is primarily foot traffic. Of course, in reality, this is easier said than done. The fact is that merchants across the industry have very different levels of digital skill sets and resources to go digital. And we have to find ways to connect the dots for them. That's where I think, so some of the initiatives that we have started and then piloted, one is the Hawker Center 2.0 pilot. We also have a Grab's Small Business Booster Program, and recently also launched what we call a Grab Merchant Academy. And we hope all these little things that we do can add value to the businesses. If I may just elaborate a bit more on Hawker Center 2.0, because it's a main pilot that we launched back in Circuit Breaker. We started the trial at Ang Mo Kio 724 Food Center. It's actually a measure to support the hawkers during the pandemic and to help find sustainable solution for the hawkers there. So as many of them have also relied on offline and walk-in sales traditionally, many of them have expressed a lot of difficulties in going online, setting up their business, going to our platform. So we tackled the issue using two things. One is to utilize our mix and match feature developed by our tech team. So essentially, this allows a consumer can buy from multiple stores in the hawker center, so that the basket size is a bit bigger, but also reduce the delivery costs across for the merchants. Second is to provide the hawkers over there dedicated tools and resources, how to help them to do well on online platform. Things like taking photograph, access to advertisement credits, how to optimize your menu. These are the second help that we can help. We did for the hawkers, and the outcome was very encouraging. For those hawkers that participated in the trial, most of them saw a doubling in their sales on our platform, and because of that trial, we are now extending the Hawker Center 2.0 to 16 additional locations island-wide. So I just want to wrap up by noting that this has been a time of change and a time to change for all of us. Right? I think we shouldn't lose this window of opportunity to take the F&B sector forward. It is a large industry. It's very, very diverse with different costs, different operating models. So it's important for us, the platform is to stay close to the ground, listen to the feedback, and adapt our models to outserve our merchants and make it sustainable as well for all parties.
Thank you. That's a really substantial amount of things that you've been doing and are continuing to do. And I just wonder, as I listen to all these examples of initiatives that you've rolled out, when you dream up these initiatives, how much of sort of government measures and policies do you take into consideration? I mean, and I suppose what I'm maybe asking is, are there things that you would like to see the government do more of, or maybe some things you would like to see them do less of? It would be quite useful to hear from your vantage point.
Sure. I mean, a lot of these things came from the feedback on the ground, hear from consumer, hear from our merchants, the struggles. And we all know, right? Again, I'm going back to the hawker example. It's hard to make it work initially because it's hard to buy a $4 or $5 duck rice and pay a $4 or $5 delivery fee, right? Because it's very hard to justify that. So in order to increase the basket size of the order, we do a mix and match, and so that the people can buy more, and then the delivery fee makes sense. When we first actually came up with this idea, there was a lot of concerns, and this is why we had a trial. We spoke with NEA. I mean, typically before COVID, what you see is you go to a hawker center, you see long queues, right? Long queues in a lot of the stores. And before COVID, it's really hard to convince a lot of these merchants to join us because I already have existing orders. There are people queuing up in front of my stores. And if I have a machine keep beeping and beeping, and so who do I serve first, right? So So this has always been a concern for us. But we said let's try first. Let's work out some models. And for us, a sustainable model perhaps, which we haven't tried, and this is something that we still thinking about, is when COVID ends and hopefully ends as soon as possible, and the queue starting, how do we make sure that the people queuing up and the person ordering online have the same queue? So one idea is perhaps even the person queuing up also online do an order through a machine, and then there's a virtual queue that then sort of helping the queue system work. So whether you order online or order in front, the queuing system works, so people are served at the right order. So these are things that we have been thinking about, and of course we continue to work with the right authorities. Even when our drivers go to hawker centers, I mean, certain hawker centers are super complicated and very big. It's hard, and the sign and the signages are not clear, and the signages are in Mandarin, for example. And if our drivers, the partners, couldn't find the store, it's quite hard for them to go store to stores to pick up the food item. So things like a mapping system, simple little things like that can also help. So we continue to innovate and come up with some ideas to make everything more convenient for everyone.
A lot of these are low-hanging fruit, actually.
Low-hanging fruit, yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. So we've gone around the panel, and I think we should come back to Minister again. And you've, I think, had the opportunity to hear from the other panelists. And I wonder if you had any reactions to what they've said. Also, if you had any particular questions you wanted to ask them, you're quite welcome to do so too.
Thank you very much, Kenneth. I think it's been very interesting listening to everyone. And I think as I was listening to them, the first thing that came to mind is how the whole approach to digitalization and the attitude towards digitalization has gone through this evolution, except it's happened in a very compressed time. As I said to you all before COVID, I think the best way I describe it using it's this. Before COVID, people used to think of digitalization as something no need to have. Then after a while, because we kept pushing the message, and this is still before COVID, it was something which they thought of as a nice to have. And then I think when COVID kicked in, for all businesses in general, and in particular those in, say, food and so on, and retail, it became something that we better have. And now I think there's an acceptance that it is a must-have for the future. It's not just about coping with COVID, it's about, in the steady state, how will digitalization be a part of my overall business? I think that's where we are today. And when you listen to Melvin, Witang, and the Hyang Ming and so on, I think the thing that comes across is we are all approaching this in different ways, you see. Because Melvin's approached this from the point of view of, hawkers, he saw a need, how do we move? Whereas from Grab's perspective, it's more like, I'm a solution provider, but how do I now adapt to this? And when you're a merchant side like Hyang Ming, you've got this large group of members, and how do we help them make this transition? You're thinking at the sort of aggregate level. So I think you asked a sort of an arrowing question about what should government do or not do, but I think it's an important question, because I think government needs to do the things where if you leave it entirely to the private sector, it may not get done. In other words, what some would call market failure type things. But there are other areas where government should let the private sector innovate and let them come up with creative solutions. So, for example, here, this is why we embarked on this for what I described earlier, the SG Digital Office and so on. Because there's a market failure in the sense that, when Grab goes to the hawker centers and so on, and Melvin, shared about, like the older hawkers especially, but, in general, there's this resistance to this change and this idea. So if government can play the role of helping to create a conducive environment and helping to flick the switch, right? So this is what we try to do with the SG Digital Office and our digital ambassadors. So we go on the ground, we have a presence on the ground, so people don't feel that they will have to, there's always this anxiety, and worry that somehow I will get stuck with this, and then what do I do after that? This is true for not just older folk, everybody. So by doing that, we take the anxiety out and we create an incentive. The incentive is, of course, like if you sign up for the Sgqr payment, Sgqr code payment solution, then first we have negotiated a very, very competitive rate with Nets. But more importantly, also over 6 months, all they need to clock is 20 transactions on the Sgqr per month, right? And they will be entitled to this financial benefit, $300 per month or 1,500 in aggregate. So it's also creating an incentive. And I think somebody asked the question, an anonymous, I was just looking at the Q&A thing, asking, so how do we promote the Sgqr code? So this is one way of doing it, and now we're thinking of other ways of doing it. So for example, can we say create I hate to sound like, but in Singapore, lucky draws are very popular. So let's say at the hawker center, you say, okay, all those who transact, right? Then 1 month you have a lucky draw. Then the stallholder as well as the buyer wins the prize, right? Whatever it is and so on. So that's one way of creating the next round of incentive and so on. So I think these are the areas where government can provide that kind of enabling environment and then work with our partners, merchant associations, industry partners, hawker associations, and so on, in order to see how we can continue to promote this. But I suppose you asked me whether I had any questions. And the question I would have is, because we are doing quite a bit of this, the thing is really, are there particular concerns or areas where we can perhaps do more? Melvin talked about one example, which is, you can't just do this in English. You must do it not just in the Mandarin and the official languages. We also need to use dialect. And in fact, our digital ambassadors, this is exactly what we do. We tell them you have to go and be able to speak in the lingo, collectively as a group, and be able to explain. Because if you can't explain digitalization in Hokkien or Teochew, I think the ability to persuade some of our hawkers and heartland shops will be a lot harder, and so on. So that's one example, but I don't know whether there are any thoughts on what might persuade more to come on board or what's holding them back, you see, and where perhaps government working with industry and our partners can do more.
Yeah, so I would invite the other members of the panel as well to jump in if you had thoughts about that very important question.
Melvin, you got something?
I'm sure you do. What else could?
What are the areas? Yeah, any other areas we can work on to get more people on board? Melvin?
I think all those devices which we are using need to be more user friendly, because I think that device is also an obstacle for a lot of hawkers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When you say user friendly, you mean what? Because today the devices are quite simple in the sense that you just scan the QR code. There's no device on the thing anymore now. For the hawkers, the QR code payment is very simply, you just take your phone, you go there, you scan it. The customer scans it. The money will be transferred. And if the hawker has, they can get a thing with the display, or they can just link it to their phone and it will show on their phone. And I think now they're also working to have the display confirming the transaction, not just in English, but also in Mandarin. So there's, the devices that, it's more about all those cards and all that. But if you're talking about Sgqr code payment, which is the one we're starting with, is all wallets, e-wallets. Actually, it's a lot easier now.
I think, Minister, there's one point is that I think some hawkers, they basically they are quite busy, they are quite short-handed,
Yes.
right? So a lot of time when they basically when they actually serve the food, and the customer show them their handphone that they actually have completed the payment, but they are so busy. Sometimes they are maybe they are eyesight is not that good, so they are not able to look at the screen clearly. So one area actually what they can do is that they can actually, for the hawkers, they can use a Bluetooth a phone that can link to their handphone by Bluetooth.
And show a bigger screen.
Yes, or and the other way, so that when the payment go through, then I think there will be a signal that sent to the Bluetooth says payment,
Yes.
that kind of things.
That's
a
good
lot.
idea.
Yeah, but a lot of them do not know how to set it up. So that's why we get Nets to help to actually provide some advice to the hawkers, right?
You have done that already, right? You've talked to Nets.
We have actually spoken to Nets, right? And then I think they are aware about those things.
I think it's a very good idea, and because you see, I think for the hawkers, if they don't need to handle the money, it actually saves them time and the hassle, because many of them wear the plastic gloves and all that when they're cooking, right? Then they go and pick out, they handle, then they put back. It's very troublesome. But if they have this digital payment solution, and they got a screen that gives them the confirmation that they can see easily, it solves a lot of problems.
Yes.
All right. So I know of this feedback, and I think, so this is where Nets has to step up and do more. I think getting such a device is not a problem, I mean, these days, the electronics for display is not the issue.
Correct.
It's more just getting it available for those who want it.
Right. To get it available, at the same time, you also need some setup,
That's right.
Some setup,
To link up.
Some link up, correct. Yes.
Great.
Okay, I think it might be a good time now to have a closer look at the questions that have been flowing in. And there's a whole variety of questions here. So maybe just to shape the questions a little bit, we might want to start with a very big picture question, which I thought might be an interesting one to deal with. And it's a question about automation itself. And there is a view that automation can drive out jobs, right? Which would actually add pressure to our economy and our well-being and so on and so forth. Business digitization, the question says, might eradicate certain jobs due to automation. Example, autonomous cars and so on and so forth. So what are the government's thoughts on this particular a problem, and also whether Grab had a view about that too, because there's also an idea that as Grab sort of automates, in its super app and all of that, some of the smaller businesses may find it hard to survive in that space. So what views do we have about this?
I suppose you want me to go first.
If you could, Minister. It's a large question. It's a very large question, but worth addressing.
So I think I saw that question too. I think it's someone called Constantine and one asking that bigger question. I think the first thing I would say is yes, digitalization. I think when you use the term eliminate jobs, the point is it also creates jobs. So it's actually a disruptive force, but it can also be a creative force. And so we have to look at it in the right perspective. So take, for example, the electric car Hyundai automated plant thing, right? And, electric cars going to be made in Singapore and so on. So the question is that, think about it for a moment. Singapore, other than about 40 years or so ago, nobody would have thought of Singapore as a place to build cars. Why are they even thinking about building cars in Singapore today? Firstly, is because they can automate the whole process. There's a lot of robotics, but it is still an operation that needs people, but it needs a different skill set of people. Second, the way they're thinking about this is, I will build the cars in Singapore, but the reason they are choosing to put it in Singapore, apart from the technology part and the capital investment that goes with it, so they want a place where they can be confident about their investment, See, ultimately they will be going, the way it is they say you can buy your car on, choose your car on the handphone, configure what you want in it and so on, confirm, and then they will start the manufacturing. You can track the process of manufacturing and so on. But here's the most important piece. Singapore is at the center of Southeast Asia and Asia, and we're a logistics hub. So what it means is you don't need these big car yards with lots and lots of cars stacked up waiting to be shipped out, you see. How it will work is they're doing the just-in-time type of logistics, right? So customer from, say, Thailand orders the car, makes all the things, then the car goes into production line comes out, then Singapore has got the logistics connectivity to take it to deliver to you in Thailand. So something that we thought could never happen in Singapore has now, started to happen, and you're going to create jobs as a result of that. Different kind of jobs. Same thing, I think when you look at many of the jobs, say for example in food and beverage and retail and so on. Yes, if you say retail, you go online, then do you need so many shop assistants? Maybe not, because you need less physical shops. But now you need people who understand how to do the marketing online, how to attract the interest of your customers online. Who are your target customers? How would you analyze it, reach out to them, and get them into your base? So it creates different kinds of jobs as well. So, and the third point I would make is that at the end of the day, for Singapore, being a small country, if we ignore technology and digitalization, it will just sail past us, you see, and we will be bypassed by all of this. Because they can easily go somewhere else and do all this. For example, Hyundai could go somewhere else and do it. And then it's not as if we will have protected our jobs. What will happen is the whole industry may suddenly move out, or we will lose the activity here. So our approach has always been, let's embrace and adapt to the technology, because this is long term, it's in our interest, and it will be competitive. But the other side, which is I think what many people are concerned about, and even in the Q&A it comes up, is we must be inclusive. Make sure we prepare our workers for this. Make sure we prepare our students who are in university and all, or poly or IT now, for these kinds of jobs. Not just what they learn today, but also for be prepared to learn for tomorrow, and so on and so forth. We need to invest in that side of it, so that it's not just about digitalization for the sake of digitalization. Because at the end of the day, if that's all we achieve, and our people don't have jobs, or their lives are not better, or their livelihoods are not improved, then what exactly are we doing, right? So the purpose at the end of the day must be to create new, better job opportunities and better lives. But the pathway is not so straightforward, because it involves adjustments by workers, by businesses, and it can be difficult at times. And that's why a lot of our programs are aimed at that, whether it's Skills Future or the things we do with businesses and all the other things, is really designed for that. There was a question about universal basic income, whether we are considering that. I would say, the best universal basic income is to make sure everybody gets a job. Anyone who wants to work, if you can get a job, that's your basic income. Then we can look at topping up or complementing it and so on. But having said that, I think we must be prepared that we are going to be in a new kind of environment. And because there's so much change going on, this is something we're studying very closely. How does the social compact change? And when companies like Grab generate all these kinds of gig jobs and so on, we must pay close attention to how our social compact is evolving as well. And this is something that as a country, as a people, we're going to have to deal with. I'll stop here. I think maybe others can comment.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from Wee Tang if you'd like to chip in here.
Sure, I think it's a bit hard to add on to what Minister has said, but I'll just echo what he has said, right? Digitalization inevitably will result in certain jobs being impacted. But I think what's important is to help the impacted jobs, the workers, to upgrade their skills, right? I mean, we take the example of the autonomous vehicles. When you have more autonomous vehicles, you still need people to maintain the autonomous vehicles. You need people, especially the drivers, who have skills on thinking about where to drive, the direction, the mapping part of the whole AV. There's so many parts about AV that still requires human inputs. Fleet management and all these will still require human beings to maintain them. So I think it's important to encourage people to upgrade and upskill. And we have started doing this. We have recently, about 4 or 5 months ago, launched Grab Academy to really help drivers to upskills, take certain new courses that can keep themselves abreast with digital developments, upgrade themselves so that they can do other jobs other than just driving.
Thank you so much. I was just, as you were talking, I was just looking at the questions, and there's this swell of questions here on a on a particular theme. And Minister, you mentioned inclusion.
Yes.
In your previous answer. And I think there are a lot of questions here pointing at this aspect of inclusion. And I'd like to throw this question to everyone, get your views on this. I remember, Melvin, that when you started, you talked about how the older hawkers find it hard to relate because of language, maybe tech, and so on and so forth. But that's only one group of people who may find difficulty. There could also be customers, for instance, who might be older, or older Singaporeans who will have difficulty carrying out the daily functions of their lives when everything is digitalized. And the questions don't actually say this, but I imagine that we would also put into this group people with disabilities, maybe lower income Singaporeans who may not have the facilities, Wi-Fi, smartphones, whatever it is, in order to function fully in a highly digitalized Singapore. And I think this is probably a question for all of us on this panel. Maybe we can go around if you don't mind. Melvin, do you have anything any examples that you can give of people you've met, maybe your customers who find it difficult to function in a highly digital environment?
I think most of the problem I encountered from customer is they find lazy, troublesome. So these are the most common thing, because for consumer, they to log in. You see, when I was in China, when I saw them using their cashier payment, it seems so easy and simple. Everybody using, even you go to the toilet, you buying a carrot or anything, they are using it. It seems so simple, easy, but I don't know why Singapore people say maybe due to the login system, they have to log in a lot of things. So they find that it's very troublesome for them to use it.
So for you, it's a mindset that can be changed. And
yeah. It's mainly on the mindset of people. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. How about Hyang Ming? Do you have an insight about this? Different groups of Singaporeans who may be excluded from the benefits of digitalization?
Yes, there are some groups of them. Some of them, I think, mainly are basically the senior citizens, who are non-English speaking. So these are the group of citizens, they may find some problem of embrace digital technology, right? But having said that, I think, over the last few months, after the relaxation of circuit breaker, we can see that a lot of Singaporeans, before that, they do not know what is QR code. But nowadays, everybody knows. Right? Because if you want to go into the building, you want to go into a shop, or you want to go somewhere else, the first thing you have to do is that you take out a handphone and scan it. A lot of them actually didn't know how to do it, and a lot of them didn't know what is QR code. But now they understand, and we can see that more and more people using their handphone to scan QR code, right? Instead, because if you don't scan the QR code, you cannot get into the building. That's one thing, unless you don't go into the building, So I think digital payment is the same thing. I think if you really have no choice, you have to make payment by using handphone. You really have to do it. But today they have a choice because we cannot say we don't accept cash, but I mean, so if they have another way of basically, have another alternative, so they will go for the other way. So, but having said that, I think one most important thing is that it must become part of your life when you want to use digital technology, right? Like suppose that if you want to make payment, you have to use it every day. Otherwise, when you're at a point of making payment, you will gabra, basically you don't know what to push, which button to press. So basically the steps are very simple. And then if you use it every day, so that will become very handy. So I think, I believe that most of Singaporeans, they can do it. It's a matter of time, and basically they have to use it every day. If they use it every day, they have a habit. I think that will come in very handy.
Okay. Yeah, so it's building a habit. It's building a habit and a confidence and learning how to use these things.
Correct.
There's no choice. You have to do it. You will do it.
Yes. Because if you look at let's say that we go to China, we look at people, they use it very handy. Even the old people, they can use it, because they use it every day. And if you use it every day, that becomes a habit, is it? Otherwise you have no confidence, you don't know how to, you find that it's too troublesome to do it, then you will not do it.
Right? Yeah. Thank you. Wee Tang, anything to add about that?
Sure.
You must see a lot of this, a lot of excluded groups in society, right?
Yeah, I think both Melvin and Hyung have talked about the consumer side, the language, the more senior citizen. Let me talk a bit more about the service providers, people. So there are two groups of people that we have been working closely with. One is the people who are deaf. So we have been working with the Singapore Association of the Deaf to help these deaf. So we have a number of deaf drivers on our platform. They drive the car, and many of them don't have the confidence that they are providing a good enough service to the passenger. So we need to help them to have that, gain the confidence that they're doing fine, don't worry too much. So when if you get for example, you get a driver who is deaf, there will be a pop-up message on the app that says, hey, the driver is deaf. Please, if you need to chat with him or her, please use the Grab Chat, the chat app. And inside the car, they're given a few flip cards to communicate with the driver, whether to turn left, turn right, whether the aircon is too hot or too cold. These things actually help the drivers to have the confidence that they are providing a good enough service to the passenger. And I think that's very important. The second group is, I think many of you also saw, we also have a group of delivery partners who are on wheelchairs. And that's something we can always do more. These people on wheelchair, they obviously have limited number of opportunities. We want to make sure that they also get equal opportunities. So we need to make sure that if they get a job to deliver food, it's not too far away. It is a closer distance delivery for them. Number two, again, tell the consumer that to ask for the consumer patience, that the partner will take a bit longer time. And for us, I think there's always more to do. For example, this wheelchair is, today, I cannot tell you that we are confident that the path that we ask the partner to go is wheelchair friendly. It's still not there yet. I mean, my goal is that when we assign a job to a wheelchair bound partner, we need to 100% make sure that the route that that person is taking is wheelchair friendly and there's no steps and all these things. So a lot of these things continue work in progress. But yeah, I think from my point of view, there's a group of people, you need to, when you talk about inclusion, inclusive is about all these other people that, they give them an opportunity to earn and make a living too. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Minister, I'm sure inclusiveness is
Absolutely.
a key consideration, right?
Yes, indeed, absolutely. And I thought that all the comments made by Melvin, Wee Chang, Hyung Ming are very pertinent, and I think what you've said. And also I saw like there's a question by Jermaine Lim, in particular talking about some of the underserved parts of our community. So I think when we're talking about inclusiveness, as you said, Kenneth, earlier, it's on the one hand, if you talk about the economy, inclusiveness means not just, how do we reach out to the smallest enterprises? So that's what we've all been talking quite a bit about. So I think I don't want to say more because I think the others have said it very well. Whether it's with outreach to the hawkers, to the micro SMEs, to our heartland shops, and so on, we have to make every effort to reach out in a way, in a language that they can understand, help them adopt it, and then move with it. Let me concentrate my comments on the social side. About segments of our society. Kenneth, you mentioned persons with disability, but of course there are other groups that we are thinking about, seniors and also low-income families. So let's talk about these a little bit. So let me, what I wanted to share was when Melvin was talking about in China and so on, and I was reminded of a video I saw, this is quite a while back, on YouTube, where the beggars in China would go up to a car. When the driver winds down the car, they'll have the bowl, the pan, but then they will flash a QR code, and then they will say, "Can scan and just pass." I think Yang Ming knows what I'm talking about.
Right, yes.
So that's the level of penetration in China, in terms of digital payment solution. So what it tells you is actually it is not beyond any one of us. And in fact, I keep saying this wherever I go, age is not the barrier, but attitude is key. And I've seen many older residents in their 70s and 80s who actually have, marvelously adapted themselves to technology, doing all kinds of interesting things. Even in the hawker center, there was a lady, Janet, I think from Tekka Market, if I remember correctly. She's one of those doing it. And when I met her, I said, so, why must you do this way? And she said, well, this is, a new thing and then she said, just try lah, must try. And that's a great attitude, if you ask me, because it means you've got the gumption to go out there and do it. So what are we doing for seniors, for low income, and for, say, persons with disability? Our objective is to make sure we have universally available and affordable digital access. That's what we want to do. Because we are now in a state where whether you want to work, you want to play, you want to learn, you need that access. And that access means two things. It means devices and connectivity. Those are the two things you need. So let's take seniors, for example. For seniors, we have launched a program where for those who can't afford it, and we have a Seniors Go Digital program, you may have heard about it, which is done through our SG Digital Office, the 1,000 ambassadors and so on. But in particular, we have a program for those seniors who may not be able to afford it. First, they can get a device, a handphone, for as low as $20. $20, I checked, it was an Oppo phone, but some of them are very smart. They want a Samsung phone. So they say, I don't mind, I pay $40 or $50 and get a Samsung phone. I don't want Oppo. I don't, so anyway. I'm not giving a value judgment, I'm just describing the situation. Then connectivity. Connectivity is the other thing, right? So we have worked with the telcos, the telco service providers. So the plans basically are $5, minimally $5 for 5 gigabits per month. In fact, some of them offer more than 5 gigs. Okay, and those of us who know this, this is a very good price. And then the seniors normally worry, what happens if I accidentally or my grandchild accidentally busts the ceiling? I will end up paying all kinds of costs. So in fact, we have an arrangement with the telcos where once they hit the ceiling, they will throttle down the speed. So they can't do the thing so easily, and so they can't overspend, as it were. So that's another thing we do. And then for the seniors to complete the loop, we run classes, as I said to you before, in different languages and including dialect. It can be one-on-one, it can be one to few, and so on. And also we are taking them now that COVID restrictions are gradually being lifted on sort of like e-learning journeys, Go around the market, learn how to pay and transact and things like that and so on. So that's what we are trying to do with seniors. Broad education for skills, but also access and device. Then connectivity and devices. Then for low-income families, I think in particular, we had a program called New PC Program, which is basically to provide computer access or computer devices for low-income families. We had this before COVID, But when the circuit breaker was implemented, we had to do home-based learning. Now suddenly around the dining table at home, you got 2 kids or 3 kids all trying to do their homework or what, plus the father or the mother working. Now the whole equation changes. So we in fact completely enhanced the program so that, so that basically for low income families when they need it, for the children in particular, we will provide a PC because a tablet is not enough, you see. For doing their work, they need PCs or laptops. So we give them, we arrange for that. With again, and there's a complementary effort on Wi-Fi, broadband as well for them, and so on. So that's the other thing that we are doing, and MOE has just announced, and I think they're going to implement it in another year or two for secondary schools already, where every child in secondary school will get a PC to take a laptop. And I think they will move it to primary school thereafter as well. The idea is to basically make sure it's universally available. So that's for low income families. I think basically what I would say is we want to make sure that money is not the reason why our low income families or seniors don't get access, the digital access. And then the last one, you talked about persons with disabilities. And I think this is a very important point because ironically, digitalization now creates new opportunities for persons with disabilities because you can do work in a way that allows them, despite their disabilities, whatever they may be, they can now do a lot of interesting jobs and so on. So this is one of the things that, we are working in partnership with like Enabling Village, etc., in order to create new types of opportunities. And again, for persons with disability, where they have a financial need, we have the mechanism, the programs to help them get these kinds of devices and connectivity. So just to pull it all together, we are very focused on making sure our digital migration and transformation is an inclusive one. Inclusive, certainly from an economy point of view. That's why all this work with hawkers, with HDB heartland shops and so on. But just as important, inclusive with our society. So seniors, low-income families, children from these families, persons with disability and so on, and even our workers, right, who need the skills and so on. This is a major part of our effort to make sure we can bring them all along. So it is about making, digital access universal and affordable, and at the same time, where it's necessary, also imparting the skills so that they can get the most benefit out of it. So I hope that gives those who are tuned in an idea of what we are doing. And Jermaine, I hope that gives you an answer as well, because you had a very specific question about this. Thanks.
Since I have you, there is a particular question here that I'm being urged to ask, which is recently there was a Tekka Market Facebook Live selling done by IMDA,
Yes.
And it seems a lot of people tuned in, and they're participating businesses got quite a lot of traction on that. So are there any plans to do more of that sort of thing or similar?
Yeah. So I think this is an example where what government tries to do or IMDA tries to do is to try and catalyze these sorts of initiatives, and getting. So this is in Tekka Market. There was one in my, in 726 Market in West Coast and others and so on. And I'm sure Melvin can tell you a lot more about things like this as well, or what's going on. But what we want to do is actually this. Actually, I would like to. It may not always work. It works in some markets for some businesses, but it may not work for all. I think Melvin is nodding, so he can tell you more about it. But my way of looking at it is very simple. We won't know until we try, and we must try and experiment and see what are the things that work and derive benefits for our, in this case, the hawkers, for example. So we are certainly prepared to try new ideas, but the important ingredient here is not just having a technology platform. That is, in a sense, almost the easiest thing. The most important thing is, in this case, for example, the market and hawker association must be supportive, and the vendors themselves, the stall holders, must be actively involved and committed. And then you must have the consumer side, they also must be prepared to come in. So it's an ecosystem, you see. Government cannot just go there and say, you must now buy on auction on online. It doesn't work like that. And Wee Tang is nodding because he knows the problem from trying to do in hawker centers and so on. It's the same thing, you see. So at the end of the day, my answer is simple. We will be prepared to try. As long as we're able to get the partnerships going, that's the key ingredient to make it succeed. But Melvin and Wee Tang may be able to add to that.
You're very welcome too.
I completely agree. Getting businesses online is probably the easy thing. Making them grow and thrive online is where I think all of us should be focusing on right now. It's not easy. As I mentioned just now, that a digital business is very different from a retail business, the brick and mortar business. And very quickly, we actually see that the online business is getting very crowded. F&B, if you go, look at the app, you see a lot of, stores and restaurants in just on your palm, right? So how do you help these businesses to differentiate themselves, stand out from the rest? So I think that's where many of our things that we want to do in the future is about helping these businesses learn what is important for them, bundling and increase their value. Digital photography, because people order based on the pictures, not because of the description. So these are things that we as community and everyone should continue to help and work on, because we are past the phase of getting people on board and online. It's now about how we make them grow and thrive online.
Thank you. Melvin, anything to add?
Because I understand that when the first time Tekka market doing live, it was quite successful. So it was until when they did ask the merchant to do live themselves. So it's actually a very big obstacle for them. Because doing live we need a lot of content. It's not as simple as we think of. We won't be telling everybody, oh, 这条是这鱼很好吃，这只鱼5块，要不要买? You don't think it can attract a lot of people. So they actually need content. And this is actually a very big obstacle for the merchant themselves, because they are not those live auctioneers, so they don't know anything about all the content, all that. So it will definitely help, especially wet market merchant in sales by doing live. But I think we need to also find someone or some company or whatever who can guide them how to do live properly.
Thank you so much. We have a minute left, which and I really wanted to sort of get around in reverse order, right, to get some reactions from you. But I thought a nice way to do this is to address one question here, which is what can we learn from other countries, right? And we've heard some examples of many of you have talked about China. And in this question, they list USA and South Korea as being quite successful in terms of their digital transformations. In your travels, in your studies, and so on and so forth, are there things you think we should pay some attention to and maybe try to intelligently adapt to our circumstances in Singapore? Sorry to spring it on you, but Wee Tang, can we start with you and we move in reverse order?
Well, thanks for that question. I do think we can learn from other countries. If I may think about an example is how can we help businesses so we have obviously a lot of small businesses today. For us, the definition of small is a single outlet business. How do we help them to grow to the next second store? When I see some of what is done in Indonesia, for example, because Indonesia is so big, and a famous store can be opening in multiple locations in Jakarta. How can we help that business to open a second store in a different location in Singapore? So I do think there's opportunity there. Whether it's using cloud kitchen, so that the cost, the capex, the expenditure cost is lower. And that can also help a business very quickly go from, if you are in Bishan today, you can easily open another one in Tampines, for example, with a very low cost to grow. So I think that's one thing we can learn from.
Thank you very much. Hyang Ming?
Okay, I think in terms of infrastructure, I think we are equally better than the rest of the country. But the thing is that I think in terms of using the technology in the business side and from the basically from the consumer side, we really have to basically change our mindset. That's one thing, one part of it, right? So basically, like what Minister has said, we have to try, and then. But as far as the business or the consumer side of it, I think for the business side of it, we have to get ourselves exposed to the digital technology, right? And then, if possible, I think they have to go for more exposure, more training, so that they are able to divert more resources to their internally, so that they are able to get their company to start the first step. The other thing is that they also need to, some of the business owner, maybe they have to get their second generation to come in, or the younger generation to come in to help them to basically to look at how to improve their digital capability, right? So I think over the other side is that I think if the younger generation find that their parents or their so-called, basically their parents are more open to the digital technology and willing to spend a bit more time, willing to spend more resources, then the younger generation probably will have more, will have confidence and interest to come into, basically to step in, to maybe to take over the business, So basically, so this is also come in as part of the business succession,
Thank you.
So yeah, that's one part of it. Right.
Thank you. That's terrific. Melvin, anything that we in Singapore can learn from other countries?
What I agree is on our own attitude. Because from hawkers' point of view, currently we got a digital resilient bonus. That one is for the hawkers. So the hawkers actually getting something benefit, which is the $300. That's why everybody is so enjoy. They are so happy to receive the $300. So they will encourage the consumer to use it. So if on another point, if we are able to give elderly consumer like some sort of like discount or whatever thing it is by using all this type of QR code payment, then I think maybe that will make more aging consumer to use that.
Okay, thank you, Melvin. Minister, a smart nation is a nation that continually learns, right?
Indeed. So, I mean, given the time, let me keep my final comments very brief. I would say first, to echo the point that Hyang Ming made, I think we all, when we are learning new things, we always worry about the problems, but we should think about the possibilities. So I think the just try la attitude must be there. And that also means that sometimes there may be some mistakes, but it's part of the learning process. We must be prepared to accept that and move forward. The second thing I would say is, I think it would be important that all of us learn to be a bit more patient, especially with the people who might find the using of the technology a bit more challenging. So, for example, if we are, dealing with seniors, they may not be as fast, but they still, want to be in more, and we must deal with each other with mutual respect and the patience. And I think even family members, in fact, when I spoke to a senior, that was one of the things that she said to me. She said her children very quickly lose patience with her, and then she feels very stupid, and so she doesn't want to do it anymore. So we have to turn this around, and we have to basically nurture the learning support the learning. And then I think we'll find that it's a lot easier. Because I think all of us, we don't want to look silly, right? And so we all will hold back unless there is a basis, unless we find that it's a supportive environment. And I think it starts from the home, the grandkids, the kids have to support the parents and so on. That's the second thing. And the third thing I wanted to say is, you don't have to walk this journey alone. Whether you're a hawker, a stallholder, a shop owner in the HEB heartland, or an SME, or a worker or a citizen, you don't have to walk this journey alone. Because firstly, as we have discussed today, there's a whole slew of government programs, but it's, and that's there to support you. And we've also got the people on the ground to help you. But it's more than that. It's also the partnerships that we have with all the, like the Merchants Association, like the companies like Grab and so on, and the community organizations and so on. So the support is there. It is there to help you make this transition. And I think if we do this together, my view is others have done it. So what is the lesson? Others have shown. I'm not sure the US is so digitalized compared, China is, Korea is, South Korea. I'm not sure about the US as much, but whatever it is, I think what we can learn from the other countries is it can be done. It's just a question of the will to do it. And I think we have the will in Singapore.
That's a wonderful place to end, and that's really all the time that we have. So I really want to thank our panelists for such an open and generous sharing. I think it was a really rich discussion. And before I invite virtual applause, I just have two short announcements to make. One is that those of you who are joining us as viewers, we will be sending you a survey for your feedback. So please do take a minute to respond. And also, if you would like to know more about upcoming events, do log on to the Smart Nation Facebook page. And with that, thank you very much. Please join me in a round of applause for splendid.
Thank you very much, Kenneth, for the
Thank
able
you.
facilitation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Goodbye.